hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. Three things most say should never come together. Others say they come together to form a virtual reality game, the likes of which we have never seen before. Hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades, also known as H3VR, is a virtual reality gun simulator with a variety of modes where you shoot at living frankfurts called Sosigs. The game's AI bot's named after a 4-year-old's misspelling of the word sausage. But that's not all the game has to offer. As of June 28th, 2019, H3VR has gotten a new update, the Meat Fortress update. As the 73rd update of the game, Meat Fortress implements TF2's stock weapons alongside bot classes of all of the Team Fortress 2 classes. I have been waiting since June 15th to do this video simply to ensure I had the latest and greatest version of the game, Meat Fortress included. But now that it's released, I can finally review hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades! Starting off as I always have done with the graphics. H3VR is a pretty beautiful game. Although not standing up to the graphical prowess and optimization you may see in some bigger budget VR games, such as Robo Recall, it does stand up very well to other VR games made by smaller teams, beating out any I have personally played, which is impressive seeing as this game was developed by an extremely small team called Rust Limited. I also have to especially point out the players' guns for looking awesome and having extremely realistic textures and models, which is one of my favourite parts of the game. The very well implemented attempts at recreating realistic firearms, which even applies to the TF2 weapons found in Meat Fortress, even with their cartoony looks. The reason I have to say the players' guns look the best is that the bots use special Sosig guns, which are much less realistic in what I assume to be a well done attempt to save on processor and graphical requirements to run the game. Even though these guns only spawn on the Sosig bots, the player can use them until they run empty, however they cannot be reloaded. Sadly, the developers missed the opportunity to give the bots a Sosig SAW P226. Taking a quick pit stop to look at the story, this game has about as much story on the whole as you'll find inside your average suburban fridge. None until you do a lot of digging and find the rotten bits and bobs in the back. Those rotten bits and bobs being in the Return of the Rotwieners game mode, which features some tiny particles of interesting story, alongside a myriad of excuses to kill zombie sausages. With the fluff out of the way, we can finally get to the meat of the video, the gameplay. The meatiest chunk of H3VR's gameplay is its gunplay, which is smoother than polished butter compared to every other VR game on the market, featuring actual reloading and real iron sights. And as for guns, H3VR has as many guns as I have technical issues, too many to count, with them ranging from pistols to submachine guns to assault rifles to anti-material rifles to even 2 different miniguns. However, even though this game has enough guns for me to give you a mile-long favourites list, I'm not going to give you one, because everybody has their favourites and just about every gun in this game is just about as justified to be in the game as any other. All the guns are extremely well made with otherwise unseen features, including extremely realistic reloading, down to all the small features, such as being able to do the iconic HK slap, or fanning the hammer on revolvers. This is quite unique for a VR game, as most games just either have you chop and changing weapons like popular memes, or reloading more akin to flipping a switch for extra bullets than actual reloading. On a slightly different note, H3VR is split up into a bunch of scenes, each of which is effectively its own self-enclosed game mode. About half of them are shooting ranges, and the other half are actual game modes. The shooting ranges are a variety of equally generic backgrounds to shoot in that are half unique and half copies of each other with some minor modifiers such as being at night. The other half are a pretty unique group of game modes ranging from a horror mode where you fight off robo-sausages, to a mode that is pretty much The Walking Dead but with hot dogs and zombies that occasionally have guns, to a direct port of Team Fortress 2 called Meat Fortress that was added in the latest update. This is all well and good, but one long-standing mode is extremely important to H3VR, because it provides a different kind of testing ground. That mode is Take and Hold. Take and Hold is a game mode that has been through 3 different iterations: the original, Take and Hold Containment, and now the new remake, which blows the other 2 so far out of the water that someone on the International Space Station while high couldn't compare. The most important thing about the new take and hold mode is the encryption holding system. In the old take and hold modes, you just had to survive. In this one, you actually have to shoot things, which if I know correctly is the entire point of the game. The only thing you actually have to shoot is the encryption targets. However, the Sosigs do their best impression of, well, a meat shield I guess, as they do a great job of making it nigh impossible to get within line of sight of your objective without getting shot enough times to allow me to repeat the Swiss cheese joke I used a few videos ago. Other than the encryptions, you also get the updated Sosig designs, with them looking and splattering better than ever before. You also get a general update to all the mechanics of the mode and a new classes system, each of which have almost alliterative aliases and whom each do minorly differing duties, with each giving their own spin on starting armaments and progression. My personal go-to, and the only particularly purposeful person, is on-site procurement Patrice, who spawns with only a combat knife and follows standard progression, a suitably challenging, yet genuinely enjoyable experience. Finally, I get to talk about the one thing that I waited on to make this review, the Meat Fortress update. Meat Fortress is an update that added what might soon become my favourite game mode in the entire game, with its selection of slightly modified Team Fortress weapons, all of which are basically only modified to make them make some goddamn sense, because as they are in TF2 they make less sense than the regenerating health found in Call of Duty I'd rather play VR. Even though most of the weapons have been modified to make sense, the rocket launcher is completely unmodified and still makes literally no sense. It still loads 4 rounds and you can still blast jump, which I will say is immensely fun and allows you to propel yourself around the map like a rocket-propelled lightning bolt on speed, especially if you use multiple explosives. Though if you're like me, you always want to push things to their limits, so you put down 24 sticky bombs, stand directly atop it, and send yourself on a two-way express train to the skybox, expected to arrive roughly half a second after you blast off. Besides blasting yourself to Pluto faster than you can say Frappa Jappa Juicer, the Meat Fortress Arsenal's explosive options are extremely powerful weapons, because unlike in TF2, these aren't tiny baby 90 base damage explosives, these are big man explosives that do big damage, and make tiny baby Sosigs explode in a shower of Sosig flesh chunks, the likes of which most Doom games struggle to top on the Gorometer. Speaking of Sosigs, Meat Fortress has at least 9 new Sosig varieties, and a torrent of TF2 inspired voice quotes that are 50% comedy gold, 25% comedy silver, and 25% denying me the actual TF2 quote by being 1 or 2 measly words off. As for the varieties, there are new Sosigs for every single class, although not all the class symbols are correct, such as with the Heavy having the old symbol from the beta. Other than that though, they're pretty damn great. Each of the quote-unquote classes of Sosig have their own unique Sosig gun, replicating some of the TF2 firearms, which although smaller are pretty good to look at and generally much better textured than any of the old Sosig guns. The Meat Fortress scene is also the first time we see friendly Sosigs that are actually fighting alongside you, with both teams being completely functional, though only the red team being available to the player at the moment, although the player will be able to join blue at some point, because who doesn't want to be blue dabba D so they can blue dabba die? Also in the future are at least 2 more game modes, which one of the developers, Anton, has told us are in the works, one of which is supposedly something to do with control points and the other supposedly to do with defense. Personally, I would love to see a payload map remade in VR, especially one like Upward or Badwater, which are extremely fun to play on in base TF2 in my opinion, and would be even more fun in VR. There are also some other features currently still being worked on, specifically the Invisibility Watch, the Sentry Gun, and the Medigun, basically every entirely new feature besides blast jumping. Although these features aren't out yet, they are definitely coming, which is definitely what's important, and overall I'm definitely happy to see the update that little bit earlier, with more to come at a later date and getting bug fixes alongside the extras when they do come out. Speaking of updates in the future, this game is in early access and constantly getting content updates, though personally I've had more bang for my buck from this game than just about any other VR game I've gotten my hands on so far, managing to rack a whopping 40 hours in the first 2 weeks I've had this game, which is more than I've racked in a few games in about 6 months. Changing the topic so much that I could win the award for most changed topic of 2019 twice over with topic changing points to spare, it's time to talk about the glitches. and by that I mean the lack of any more serious than a paper cut on the top of your foot that you got last week. There's a few graphical glitches, such as a shotgun shell sticking out the back of the scattergun's handle when you cock the lever forward, that I'm assuming is leftover code from a different gun. Oh, and you can stick your face into a wall to sort of look through it. It doesn't always render properly, it doesn't always render hidden Sosigs, but sometimes you can see the positions of some Sosigs. Otherwise, there's basically no glitches. In conclusion, Somewhat Warm Dogs, Regular Shoes and Foot Grenades is a pretty great VR game that has absolutely absorbed my time for the past half a month, causing me to lose sleep trying to complete the videos that I had in the works before the update dropped, and finally let me talk about this absolute gem of a game. This game has everything. Guns, gibs and goofiness, with voice lines that are comedy platinum and weapons that are more realistic than any I've seen in a VR game before. The developers are hardworking and care about the community, so much in fact that I asked a question on Reddit about this game, and I got a response from Anton, a developer at Rust Limited, after just a few hours, and he's well known for this kind of thing, which is awesome. And as far as I'm concerned, H3VR is the kind of game that validates owning a VR headset and that should be on the must-buy list of anyone who likes VR shooters. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. I have been your host, Vert343, signing off. Peace out, gentle dogs.